Hi, this is Will Marshall, and this video is a functional walkthrough of the new DJ template for the Livid Instruments OhmRGB I've just released. Now, the OhmRGB, which you can see here, is a beautiful bespoke controller made by a company called Livid Instruments out of Austin, Texas. You can see it's similar in format to the APC40, which the original DJ template was made for, but it is a much better piece of hardware. It's got RGB LEDs, so it's more programmable. It's lighter, it's smaller, and it's generally just a much nicer thing to use. So Livid very kindly sent me one of these to get one of these templates put together on, and I've had a lot of requests from people over the last couple of years asking me when I'd do this. So here goes. It's adapted from the APC40 version. Obviously I've modified it to work better with the Livid Instruments hardware. You'll notice the hardware has better LEDs but doesn't have any endless pots. And I think the end result is very similar but a bit more ergonomic. It's got a cleaner workflow. It's easier to understand. But if you're familiar with one, you'll be familiar with the other. So to start with, I'm going to assume for the purposes of this video that you've already got it successfully installed and set up. I will do another installation video which will show you how to get everything working, but this video would be too long if I went into that as well. So just a quick recap though. To get it, you want to go to willmarshall.me. You'll see a link on the home page. Costs $20 US. There should be a light version coming out at some point which doesn't have the remote script, and that will be free, much like the APC version. But the full kind of template with the remote script is $20. It comes with a template you can see here for Ableton with all the MIDI mappings and stuff pre-assigned. This is kind of designed to work out of the box for a 4-channel DJ system. And it comes with a custom remote script you can see here called Ohm Advanced that I've written from scratch essentially, which communicates, talks to the Ohm, talks to Ableton, and enables some relatively sophisticated functionality that you wouldn't get otherwise. So, if we look at the hardware, the general layout is pretty simple, and if you're familiar with the APC version of this template, you'll find it immensely familiar. So on the left-hand side, we have 4 decks. These are loosely equivalent to CDJs or something like that. So you've got 4 channel faders for the volume on those 4 decks. You can see they're here, 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 and here. You have select buttons for the 4 decks here, 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 and here. A nice little thing about these select buttons, if you hit them twice, it'll actually swap between the currently playing clip and the device view, so you don't need different buttons for that. Quite handy. And you've got a volume fader, as I mentioned, and you've got EQ3, so standard DJ EQ3 on each channel. So if I play a clip, you'll be able to hear that. Highs, mids, lows, volume, and swapping backwards and forwards. And now you will have noticed that when I push play, all the lights light up, like so, and when I push stop, they darken. That's just a little thing. I actually get confused occasionally, is Ableton playing or not, and it behaves slightly differently. So I've given you that really obvious LED feedback so you can tell. And the other thing you'll notice is the Ohm logo up here. When you're actually playing, it flashes on the BPM, so it's a metronome. It allows you to see where the beat is, bring things in on time. It's not quite as extensive as the visual metronome in the APC, which indicated where you were in the bar, but I think this is really handy nonetheless and doesn't use up much space. So, that's those controls here. The next thing is this group of 4 columns of LEDs here. So this has got kind of a standard Ableton clip bank. You can see this, in this case it's a blue box. For most people it would be a red box. The distinction here is each one of these slots has a different color. So 3 is blue, the first one is red. Just so that doesn't confuse people. You can navigate around like this, and you have a clip grid here, on which the first 4 channels correspond to the 4 decks. So you can see I can bring in a track, can bring another track. It's the same track, so you can hear some phasing there, which is always nice. And at the bottom, the red buttons are clip stops. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 5 play clips full of 4 channels, clip stops at the bottom. The next ones down, the blue ones, are the cue buttons. It's actually set to solo right now because I've plugged into a sound card for recording this video that only has 1 channel output. But if you're using a multi-channel card like you should be, and you've made sure that this button down here is set to Q rather than solo, which will be possible when you've got the Q going to a different channel from the master, then these buttons will turn the Q on and off, like so. Relatively simple. The entire bottom row of buttons, as you've probably worked out by now, is for the master VU meter. So this is a relatively accurate VU meter that shows you the volume on the master channel. And that's it for these 4 columns. At the bottom, you've got the crossfader, which is used for dry wet on all the dummy clip effects, which are on this side here. Won't go into that quite yet. And here, you've got BPM down. You can see up here, the BPM decreases in half BPM increments when I hit that button, and when I hit this one, the BPM increases. I've chosen 0.5, it seemed like a decent compromise, but I'm waiting on user feedback, and I might actually adjust that so that it goes in, say, 0.1 rather than 0.5 increments if people find that too jerky. So, the 4 channels here are the dummy clip controls. So, you're probably familiar with dummy clips if you're an experienced Ableton user, but I'm not going to go into lots of detail. Tom Cosm actually has some very good videos on how these work under the hood, how to make your own. But what they essentially are is effects patterns, effects automation that are on clips that you send audio through, and you can have some kind of regular pattern playing. So if I show you a very simple one, and I bring the crossfader to the right, so the sound goes through all the dummy clips, and I play this down 1 here. You can hear it's 1 bar long, down 2, 2 bars long, etc. Here we've got delays with the bass still in, flanger, some send effect patterns, so that's relatively straightforward. You've essentially got this group of clips here on these 4 channels, and you can launch them with the ohm as necessary. Now, one thing you might discover very quickly is as your set gets longer and you have more and more tracks in here, the clips go off the bottom. What I usually do is select the entire group of them here or even here and just duplicate them down over and over again. So as I move down in the session like this, I'm going over the same group of effects over and over again. I do intend to actually do a version of this template where every single one of these buttons is hard-coded to a single effect, so you don't have to scroll around, look at the screen, work out what effect it is, then launch it. People seem to be in 2 minds of that. Some people like that idea, some people don't. I'm going to implement it, release it, and see what people think. So, as I mentioned, the crossfader is the dry wet control. You can hear it does that. Now for DJs who are used to kind of traditional mixes, that incidentally is a post-fader effect, so if you have a delay or something in there, it will tail off nicely. You won't cut it off abruptly when you bring the crossfader over. So, other things, obviously these bottom 4 buttons currently don't do anything. They're used for the VU meter. In the very first release of this, I have not installed a looper, as I have with the APC40 template, but a couple of releases out, I will be putting the looper on these 4 buttons here. I just haven't had the time yet, and I wanted to get this released so people could start using it. These 4 bottom buttons, the green ones, are the effects bypasses. So if I had 2 tracks playing, which are handily out of sync because I haven't walked one of those, if I bring the crossfader across, by default, they both go through the effects. If I bypass that one, it doesn't go through the effects, and if I bypass that one, it doesn't go through the effects. So essentially, when it's on, that means the effects are enabled for the corresponding channel, and when it's off, the effects are disabled for the corresponding channel. It skips all these dummy clips and goes straight out to the master. So the next set of things, obviously, this is your clip up and down. You've actually got left and right. You don't need left and right for this specific template. You only ever want to go up and down. I might replace the left and right with something more useful. You've got stop, and you've got play. And note that play goes purple and flashes when you're playing, just in case it wasn't really obvious. I like flashing lights. And then the Livid Instruments button up here, which doesn't light up, is the shift button. Now, right now, there aren't that many shifted functions. I think shifted functions are not great. They're kind of not very ergonomic, and they're hard to remember. But if you hold down shift, you'll note that the clip grid moves up and down in groups of 5, and you can actually move it up and down here, which is a much faster way to navigate around the session. Quite simple. You've got these 4 channels here, these 4 groups of controllers here, and again they line up linearly with the 4 decks. And what I've done is, because the Ohm has 4 end-to-end encoders and 4 faders here, I've put the most useful and the most popular effects, the most of the group of effects that's in each channel, you can see here on these faders. So it's just done with MIDI mapping, so it's very easy for you to change which effects are on these if you want to, add your own effects, switch out which ones are mapped. But what I've chosen is the fade to grey effect, which sounds like this. Everyone loves this. Very useful for mixing, so you can. And the second one is the beat masher effect. Relatively straightforward, but you'll see down here I've left all the other ones in place, including the cutoff stuff. Don't worry about what that does. There's another video on my Vimeo account that will explain it if you're interested, but you can map your own effects to it as necessary. And the last controls on there are these 4 beat repeat buttons. So these are global beat repeat buttons. They apply to everything. They're on the master channel. So half bar, 1 beat, half beat, and those are momentary, so obviously they're on when you hold them down, and they turn off instantly when you let go of them. So that's everything on the controller, you can see. As I mentioned, there are a couple of features that are not yet finished but will be soon. The looping controls here. One other big change I'd like to make, which I haven't managed to get time to do, is make these buttons and these buttons differently colored well, just differently colored to indicate the presence of a clip. Right now they're all pale blue, so that would just make the left and the right hand side easier to differentiate. And one thing, if it wasn't clear, I know the video quality on this camera struggles a bit with some of the colors. When you play a clip, it flashes yellow and then goes green. So these are all cyan, the ones which have clip slots in, well, clips in the slot but are not playing. This one's actually green, but this webcam really struggles with the difference, even though it's quite obvious when you're looking at it in person, just in case it looked like no color change was happening. And that's basically it. I'm not going to go into extensive detail about how all the routing in this system actually works. There's a few kind of, I guess, clever stuff, non-obvious things here that you don't necessarily understand when you look directly at it. It's just weird Ableton hacks to make everything work. But if you go into the APC40 video, especially the older one, it actually goes through in a bit more detail how all these effects are put together. So if you're interested in kind of making your own templates, that'll be the thing to do. Oh, and lastly, I forgot to mention this button here. It's not lit up or anything, but if you hit it, that's essentially the full reset button. So it will turn off all the dummy clips. It will make sure that everything's set back to 0. It can't, unfortunately, set the position of these faders or anything like that, but I usually hit that a couple of times when I first start playing, just to make sure that everything's not playing when I expect it not to be playing. So that's pretty much it for the template. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's useful to you. If you have any feedback or anything like that, like I say, this is the first release, so feel free to drop me an email with feature suggestions, things you're not sure about, things you might want to like changed, and it'll probably end up in the next release if enough people want it. Thank you very much.